The frantic rescue from Afghanistan continues against the clock, and we begin today with the South Florida connections. Breaking this morning first, the U.S. reports an airstrike has taken out a vehicle bearing an explosive device, perhaps related to renewed warnings of another imminent terror attack. In the airport in Kabul, evacuations under deadline. Here at home, increasingly partisan finger pointing into what is going wrong and what is going right.
South Florida Congressman Gimenez is calling for an investigation into the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. He is joining us today from his home. Congressman, great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all doing?
We're doing well, but of course, I think we are all grieving for the loss of these 13 U.S. military men and women. And I'd like to ask you, take a moment to begin with to express your condolences on this terrible loss of life.
Look, the price of freedom is not free, and unfortunately, many young men and women have to give their lives for us to be free. And in this case, those servicemen gave their lives to protect the freedom of not only American citizens but also our Afghan partners and allies. And so my heart goes out to them and their families. Words just can't describe, how I felt when I heard about what happened. It was totally predictable and shouldn't have happened. So that's also why it kind of hurts a little bit, because it really is something that shouldn't have happened.
So let's pick up on that, Congressman, if we could. You have called for an investigation, a DOD Inspector General investigation, filed a bill. It has three components to it. One, briefly, why and how much of the U.S. military equipment was left behind and how that happened, evacuation procedures, and also whether Afghan forces may have gone to Iraq with that military equipment. There's nothing in that bill, though, in the call for the investigation that includes maybe the context and the path to what led up to what happened over the past couple of weeks, including negotiations by President Trump with the Taliban that paved the way for the exit. Why not put in that breadth and scope as well?
Well, because there was nothing that President Biden needed. He didn't need to follow what President Trump had done. Obviously, he hasn't followed what President Trump has done in any other instance. And so, as situations change, your plans have to change. This is all on President Biden. This is not, President Trump has nothing to do with this. The withdrawal, the way the withdrawal was done, you don't pick up and take your military out and leave all your civilians and thousands of our Afghan partners and allies there to fend for themselves. That's crazy. And you just don't pick up in the middle of the night, leave all your bases, leave all your equipment, which is what we did because President Biden put himself in an arbitrary deadline date. And by the way, you never tell your opponents and your enemy what your deadline is. That's crazy too.
So
okay?
just when
the mission is over, okay, and that there is no date for that. When the mission is over, then it's over, and then we leave. Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt. Really tough to have conversations on Skype back and forth without actually being together. But I just wanted to follow up really quickly. Would you have advocated that President Biden renegotiated with the Taliban?
There's the renegotiation aspect. First of all, President Trump's negotiations had some conditions. They couldn't move on provincial capitals. They couldn't be a threat to Americans. That's what President Trump had negotiated. President Biden said, okay, I want to leave, Afghanistan too. But look, you just don't give a time, and you say we are going to leave when the mission is over. And by the way, our mission is taking all of our citizens and taking all of our Afghan partners and allies. And if you want to help us do that, we'll be out of here sooner. But if not, then we're going to take our time and leave. And we're not going to leave $80 billion worth of military equipment for you to have at the end of the day. And we're certainly, when we're leaving, we're not going to have you protecting our perimeter as we leave. Yeah. So those are the things that really drive me up the wall. Any 5-year-old would have done a better job than this. And so, this is all in the president and his administration. And from what I understand, the people in the DOD, at least the people in the DOD, from what I've heard, were totally against this timetable and the method of this retreat and withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the president overruled them all because he wanted to be out by 9/11. And because he wanted to be out by 9/11, it cost these 13 servicemen their lives. And we don't know if any more are going to be hurt. Hopefully not. We know there's terrorist threats that are continuing there in this really not a well thought out method of getting up people out.
Yeah. Well, I think we would all agree the sight of the United States trying to get its people out, get the Afghans out, has been humiliating. Haven't seen anything like this since the fall of Saigon, the helicopters lifting off the U.S. Embassy. But having said that, Congressman, most Americans were ready to get out of Afghanistan. They thought 20 years of war was too much. So the issue then really becomes the way the exit has been bungled. Is that it?
Oh, absolutely. I think, there's bipartisan support that, we needed to leave, Afghanistan. However, I think we're having some second thoughts about leaving entirely and not having some kind of a base. The president makes a lot to do about we have this over the horizon kind of capability to keep us safe. Listen, you're going to have to fly over Pakistan in order to have any over the horizon capability. And he made a lot to do about, getting these two planners that we got, I guess, yesterday. They happen to be right next to Pakistan, which we actually have intelligence assets in Pakistan. However, I am not so sure that, not having any bases at all, any base of operations so that we can monitor the situation in Afghanistan is going to make America safer. I am afraid that one day we may have to go back. But there was bipartisan support to get everything out, but not this way, not in this fashion, and not in this embarrassment. Look, our allies around the world are livid as they weren't even, consulted in the way and the manner that this withdrawal was conducted. And so, the manner that it was conducted, I am really upset about it. I think it was atrocious. It's a dark stain on America. If we leave any of our Afghan partners there, any of our Afghan allies there that have risked their lives for 20 years fighting alongside with us, and then now if we leave them there, not only are they going to be put to death, their families are going to be put to death, and then who in the heck is going to help us in the future? That's what really gets me upset, the way that this was done. And I'm telling you, this was not done right. And I'm telling you, too, that this president also failed to and actually disregarded some very good advice. And so we need to get to the bottom of this. Who said what? Who advised what? What was the final decision? And the president said that the buck stops with him. Yeah. Well, the buck stops with you. And you didn't do a very good job at this.
I'm sorry. Let me just jump in to say in mid-July, at least 10 very high-ranking diplomats and some maybe retired military people sent the president a very urgent message saying this looks like it's going to collapse long before you think it's going to. Let's begin the withdrawal process, get our troops out, get our equipment out, and he ignored it. Now, should that not be part of a congressional investigation?
It should all be. Let's see how serious we are. It's unfortunate that Congress is very partisan, but I'll tell you, there are Democrats that are livid about what's happened, especially those that are veterans. They are livid about what's happened, and the manner in this was the way this was conducted. And look, we need a lot of questions answered. If the military actually was the one that advised the president, and he said that everybody was on board with this, well, I don't believe that for a second. Okay, so, but if they were, then they should all be fired because this is pitiful. Any 5-year-old could do a better job. And so we need to get to the bottom of it and see exactly what happened. And if Iran did get some of our equipment, look, Iran's going to get some of our equipment anyway. Okay, the Russians are going to see it. The Chinese are going to see it. They got more Black Hawk helicopters there than the Australian, Army and Air Force. They have more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world. 200 airplanes, 600,000 small arms, $80 billion worth of stuff, night vision goggles, protective gear, all the stuff. They're now getting dressed in our stuff. Okay, so if we ever have to go back to fight them, we're going to have to fight them against our own stuff. There's 70,000 vehicles that we left. For God's sake, I can't believe just what happened and the way it's transpired. It makes me sick, and obviously you can see I'm a little upset.
Can we just turn really briefly to a war that we are fighting at home, the COVID pandemic, Florida being the epicenter? It appears by some medical accounts that the caseloads in this state may have peaked. The death rate, though, has not, and that is a typical lag standard. So with the really dire situation that this state is in right now, we are seeing increasingly entities, businesses turning to vaccination mandates. I wanted to hear you on the record. You've already said you're against mask mandates. Would you support a vaccine mandate now or in the future?
No, and because this is America. Do I support vaccinations? Absolutely. This spike we have right now, the pandemic, is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And then all you need to do is look at the data. Something like over 99% of the people dying are unvaccinated. 90% of the people in the hospital are unvaccinated. So that what we need to do is very clear. We want you to get vaccinated. We want you to get vaccinated. But do I think that that I'm going to mandate you to get vaccinated? No, I'll let you know. No, I'm not in favor of that. I still believe this is the land of the free. But we should do everything in our power to get people, as many people vaccinated as possible, show them the data, and and protect yourselves. That's what we need to do. But as far as vaccination mandates, no, I'm not in favor.
Congressman, stay right there. We have a lot more questions for you for Congressman Carlos Gimenez. We'll be back in just a minute. On the Sunday morning, we are speaking with Congressman Carlos Gimenez of Miami. Congressman, July 11th, tens of thousands of Cubans all across the island took to the streets saying, Libertad, we want freedom. The conditions there are awful. The Biden administration has responded with sanctions against some high-ranking officials, but internet connectivity still has not resumed for the island. What should the Biden administration be doing now?
I think the first thing that we asked them to do was, we know that we have the technology, try to restore as much of this internet connectivity or something like an internet connectivity in the island. We want the people of Cuba to be able to communicate with themselves, and we want them to be able to communicate with the outside world. That'll give them a little bit of protection against this very brutal regime. The regime did what the regime always does. When they have any kind of dissension inside the island, they come down with a hammer and they really brutalize and instill fear back to the people. The only way that you can get the people to go against them is if they have some way of showing what this regime is doing and then get international pressure against the regime. And so that's the number one thing that we want the Biden administration to do. We also want to make sure that the Biden administration continues to have a strong stance against Cuba in terms of yes, sanctions against individuals, sanctions against the regime, making sure the regime doesn't have access to credit, even though the regime has done a real good job of ruining that because they don't pay their bills. Those are the kind of things that we need the Biden administration to do. But right now, since we do have the technology, we need to move on that and see how we can restore that kind of communication ability inside Cuba as soon as possible.
Can't wait to hear about that. Congressman Carlos Gimenez, we always appreciate your time. We never have enough time. And I invite you to stick around if you can for a couple of minutes and watch our next interview. I think you will be really interested in that too. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I guess I'm going to have to watch it because I can't watch it through Zoom, but I'll look at it.
Quick, tune in.